remind everybody about cell phones, and we'll call the roll.
Mr. Vickery?
Present.
Mr. Olthoff?
Here.
Ms. Barber? Mr. Bossert?
Here.
Ms. Campbell?
Present.
Mr. Kalecki? Mr. Legess? Mr. Lear? Mr. Scholl?
Present.
Mr. Washington? Mr. Stauffenberg? Ms. Wilson? Mr. Cruz?
Here.
Mr. McLaren?
Here. Quorum is present. Under public comment, I had no one sign up for public comment. Is there anyone here who wants to make public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on. There are no minutes. Stephanie's been ill. We'll get the minutes next month. And the first thing on the agenda I'd like to do today is amend the agenda. The public defender and the chief judge are here, and we'd like to put them on first so they can get back to the courthouse. Mr. Olthoff with a motion to amend, Mr. Bossert with a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like saying, motion carries. Chief Judge Erickson and Mr. Glazer are here. You need two mics, or you want to go set up here and you can share this?
We can share it, that's great.
Good morning, Jim. Good morning.
Good morning, Jim. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
We're appearing here together this morning because there was a discussion at the last Criminal Justice Committee meeting about the needs in the Public Defender's Office. I just want to give you kind of a brief perspective on the Public Defender's Office, and then I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Glazer, who is the Chief Public Defender, and he can talk about some specific numbers. But the Public Defender's Office plays a vital role in the operation of our criminal justice system, in assuring that defendants, many of whom appear in criminal cases, have adequate counsel. And the law does require that everyone charged with a crime that is punishable by the possibility of imprisonment, that imprisonment means even a day in jail, that they are entitled to be represented by counsel. And unfortunately, in our community, as in many communities, there are many people who are charged with crimes who do not have adequate resources to hire private counsel. They are indigent, they qualify for the public defender. This is particularly an issue in the courtrooms 300 and 309, which are the two courtrooms that handle misdemeanor and felony cases. It's also true in courtroom 200, which handles the aggravated traffic call. But all of our felony cases go through 300, 309, with the exception of the felony DUIs, and then DUIs, driving while license revoked. Those are our aggravated traffic on the second floor. Now, we also have a public defender need for juvenile cases. And I'm going to let Ed speak specifically to his office and the needs in just a quick moment here. But I would estimate in courtrooms 300 and 309, where we have felony cases, about 800 felonies cases filed each year, that probably in the range of 75% or so require appointment of a public defender. And that's just a reality, and that's probably tracks fairly well with other large counties. The reason for this, I think, is somewhat apparent. There is a correlation between socioeconomic status and crime, and frankly, we do see individuals charged with white-collar crimes or with crimes of all variety who have adequate resources to hire counsel, but by and large, they do not. And I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Glazer, who's done some analysis in his office.
Good morning. I'd like to start out by talking about Senate Bill 181. For those of you that sit in or sitting on the Criminal Justice Committee. We've talked about this over the past year, but there is a proposal in the state Senate that would mandate standards for public defender offices throughout the state of Illinois. There's about 15 different standards that they are seeking to apply. The one that is the scariest and that needs to be addressed is mandatory caseload limitations. The proposal references the American Bar Association guidelines for maximum caseload for defenders, and they do give a little bit of room, saying that the counties will set these caseloads because each county is a little bit different. There's some counties where the state's attorney and the public defender are like cat and dogs. No cases are resolved, every case goes to trial. They would need a different caseload than a county where there's a good working relationship between the public defender and the state's attorney, and a lot of cases are resolved by plea negotiation. But for the most part, we're looking at the American Bar Association guidelines. Those guidelines for a full-time defender in felony court is 150 cases handled per lawyer per year. Last year, for 2007, my staff, the lawyers that work in felony court, handled 123, and we're part-time. If you figure half-time, the ABA guideline would say 75 is your limit. That's the most you should handle in a year. We get 123. The ABA guidelines for handling misdemeanors is 300 per year. Well, those same 10 lawyers handled on average 179 misdemeanors. So not only are we in excess, if you're just looking at felonies, but now you have to add the misdemeanors on top of it. It's easy to see that we are way above the American Bar Association guidelines. Addressing the felony court, as Judge Erickson said, 75% of all felonies that are filed in this county end up in my office. There's 8 full-time prosecutors handling those 2 courtrooms. It's been a long time since I've been a prosecutor, 25 years actually. And maybe I'm biased in favor of the defense standpoint now, but I think it actually takes a little bit more time for a lawyer to defend a case than to prosecute. When there is an arrest made, there's an investigation made by the police, and it comes into the state's attorney's office, okay, here's the witnesses, here's what happened, here's the reports. And I'm not by no means belittling their job or saying it's an easy job, not at all. But it's kind of laid out in front of them, at least until you get close to trial, and when you have to start talking to your own witnesses and getting things ready for trial. But when we get the file from the court, we have to start our own investigation. We have to speak with the client, meet with witnesses, develop the defense. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is it may take a little bit, if you look at a case-by-case analysis, it may take a little more time to prepare a defense for the case than the prosecutor. So even though we maybe only at 75% of the cases that the prosecutor has, we have an extra time factor. So in my mind, it's pretty close to a wash. Sure.
There's a study out also that we had the National Center for State Courts come in and spend a lot of time with us at the request of Judge Wenzelman when he was chief judge about 5 years ago. And one of the things that they made us aware of was that there have been studies of court systems to show what court systems are really effective. And the study showed, kind of regardless of the amount of resources, that well-balanced systems are the most effective in terms of reducing caseloads, in terms of providing justice. And by well-balanced, we mean numbers and quality. And resources are obviously important in trying to assure that we have that kind of balance. Ed said there are eight prosecutors spread between 300 and 309. That's works out to 4 full-time assistants per courtroom, and the equivalent in terms of full-time public defenders per courtroom would be what,
but we have 10 part-time defenders to cover those 2 courtrooms, which would be 5 full-time lawyers.
Okay.
So there's
So
8
it's,
to 5.
as you can see, 8 to 5, and that makes a difference. The so that's really the heart of the matter. Is that Mr. Glazer is here this morning asking for an adjustment in his budget that would provide for more balance between the state's attorney's office and the public defender's office. And I'm here as chief judge to say that that is important to the operation of the criminal justice system, that will make for a more effective criminal justice system, that will reduce backlogs, and it's the right thing to do.
Getting into some specifics, as you know now, there is a disparity between the prosecution and the defense side in the courtrooms. I'm here asking for your help. While it'd be nice to get 3 more full-time lawyers in felony court and paralegals and some help elsewhere, I understand the economic situation that all of us have, and particularly the difficulties that you as members of this committee have. What I am proposing is having a full-time defender for felony court and 1 paralegal. We're a little behind, the public defender's office a little behind. I mean, the courts have paralegals, the states have paralegals. We do not, and we can use one because in one sense, a good paralegal can take off a lot of work that a lawyer otherwise would have to do themselves. So that will help get that excess over the ADA guidelines down and try to get closer to that even playing field with the prosecution. A paralegal is probably going to cost you about $22,000 a year plus benefits. A full-time attorney for felony court, so we're looking for somebody with some experience. We don't want somebody right out of law school. We want somebody that can be handled with serious cases, say, go defend this case. I think that's probably going to cost you about $65,000 plus benefits. So those are the salary requirements. We talked about the issue of where we're going to put these people. For those of you that have not been in the courthouse lately, the public defender's office is pretty much like an island. We're kind of landlocked on all sides with unavailable space but for one.
It's really not so much an island as it is a cave. It's in the basement. There are no windows.
We didn't get water in the basement during all the rain?
No water.
But secure. Very weather secure.
If there's a nuclear attack, we'll be in the best position.
Unless it's a direct
But as far as the space, we'll work through that somehow. If we have to put a tent in the courthouse yard, we'll make it work, because I think it's more important that we get people, we get staff, we got to work on getting these caseloads down. Because it's more than, I know for you it's economics, but for me it's more than that. I've been doing this 25 years now, and it's just so important to our system that somebody accused of a crime has adequate representation, not just in their skills, but in their ability to commit time to it. I mean, we're dealing with serious cases. A mistake literally, could cost somebody the rest of their life in prison. So it's serious business. And
Another way in which a mistake can occur is if there is inadequate resources, that can be reflected in an appeal for ineffective assistance of counsel. And then we have a case that's reversed on appeal, comes back, and you have that difficulty for the system. Now the prosecutors have to re-prosecute it. The victims are aware that the case was reversed, and that's a very costly experience also. If I could, I know that you probably will have questions, but if I could ask you, your total that you're asking for an adjustment is how much then?
well, the 22 and 65 plus benefits, which I think historically you've had a kind of a 25% tax So it'd be 87 and 25% of that, so it'd be.
I would like to throw in this also. Both of us are aware of the needs, the financial needs, or the financial analysis that this committee and that all the board members put into, running the county. I mean, assuring that it is adequately financed and funded. And I'm here this morning to say that I have had conversations with Steve McCarty and as well as Carl, and I believe that I can commit to working with Steve to basically reallocate some funds from money that's been, I think, approved for the court budget to help allay the expense, any additional expense of the public defender's office. That's how important I think this is. And I believe that working with Steve, that we would be able to offset this additional expense probably by an amount approximately $50,000.
Along with that, yes, Mr. Scholl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just out of curiosity, with the economic downturn that we've seen recently, do we see a correlating increase in the number of cases that require a public defender?
Well, the circuit clerk would probably be the one to quantify that in pure numbers. The observation that I made in criminal justice last week was I have observed an increase in serious crime, meaning armed robberies, home invasions, robberies. So there absolutely could be a correlation when the count is bad. If somebody's out of work, people get desperate. And I can't, we got so many armed robberies this year, it's many more than we typically would have.
Yes. Chairman Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we kind of need to take this a little bit farther, because I think at criminal justice, Mr. Glazer also said that he is going to implement taking 2 part-time positions and making another full-time position. The part-time positions do receive benefits though, right?
They do that. That did not require spending any money, so it was not referred to finance. But I wanted to get their approval to go out this since we were changing the office. So the 2 part-time spots would become 1 full-time spot for the same salary, but you're only paying 1 set of benefits. So frankly, you might save about $8,000 in benefits by that move. And again, I could digress a minute. The Public Defender's Office now has 15 lawyers, 2 of whom are full-time, 13 are part-time. It made a lot of sense 10, 15 years ago to have all part-time defenders. The reason that it's important to have part-time defenders is when you have co-defendant cases. If you have one murder case where there's 4 people accused of it, if you are all in a centralized office, if we were 100% full-time, we could represent one of those defendants. The other 3 would have to be appointed private counsel at a much greater rate than what the public defenders are paid. So that was the reasoning for keeping part-time public defenders. And we still need that. We don't need to have the disparity of 13 to 2. And if you're looking at a big picture, 5 or 10 or 15 years down the road, it should be maybe almost half and half, maybe 7 and 7. And I think that, well, the consolidation of the 2 part-time spots to 1 full-time defender in felony court is just the first step in that. But just the full-time presence. If you're a part-time and we each have a designated day for our volume calls, if you're sick, if you have a death in the family, something happens, and you're not there, there's nobody there to take your spot. So that just bags up the courts, slows everything down. But by having a full-time defender in felony court, there's always a person there. There's a body there. Hey, Glazer's sick today. Here's his files. Go ahead and they can manage those files for that day. So it's important to get, in my mind, more full-time defenders gradually as we go down this road. And I'm saying gradually, hopefully, because if Senate Bill 181 does pass and they impose those guidelines, it will not be able to be done gradually. It would be catastrophic economically. We'd be talking about several more lawyers.
Well, and that was the point I was gonna make. Because of that, you know, we're not looking at two new benefit packages. You're only looking at one, even though you're gonna be you're asking for two new positions. We can shift the one from the part-time that you're gonna be shifting. I mean, we freed up a benefit package that will just be shifted over to this. So we're actually only looking for one benefit package for two positions. So we already have that expense already. The other thing I do like, and I want to commend both of you, is that although you're coming and asking us for additional dollars, it's nice that you're also coming and reevaluating things that are going on and being part of a solution here too, to come up with monies to help, you know, supplant these positions. So, you know, we know this is an important, you know, department, and if we have to go out to outside attorneys, it's going to cost us a lot more. So if we can be innovative in how we do this, it makes not only our job easier, but it makes the whole budget easier, and we can do a lot more things with solutions that you bring forward. So I do commend you on bringing something forward too.
Thank you.
Mr. Olthoff.
What's the status of Senate Bill 181? Is it in
It was-
committee? Still in
Let's
committee?
refer back to committee.
Any other questions? Oh, Mr. McLaren.
Yes, just a question. Presently, Ed, what percent of your budget is salary?
95. It's almost all personnel.
Okay.
We don't have cars and things like that. We've got the lawyers and we got our staff and investigators. That's really it.
It's very bare bones, you know. One thing we have to be concerned about is that we do have the office funded to the level that we never get to a point where it's necessary for the court to appoint outside counsel to represent individuals. Because remember, we don't have any choice in the matter. These individuals, if they're indigent, have to have counsel. And if we had to go to appointment of outside counsel, that would grow very, very expensive very quickly. I mean, the going rate is well over $100 an hour, and you would, in cases where outside counsel have been appointed, typically death penalty cases, and there's a capital litigation fund out of Springfield to pay for their expenses, you can end up spending $50,000 to $100,000 on one case per attorney, and those are typically 2 or 3 attorneys appointed on a case. So that would be a complicated case, but that gives you an idea of what it would cost to go to outside counsel.
It's actually even more than that. Right before the capital litigation trust fund act was enacted, within 6 weeks of that, I did a death penalty case. It resulted in a hung jury. It was retried by 2 lawyers from the capital litigation trust fund, and I think one of them got $150,000 and the second one got $125,000. So it's $275,000. That second trial was a hung jury, and they tried it again for almost the same rate. So in one case, you're talking over $500,000. Now, not every case is a death penalty case, but at I believe it was $132 is the private counsel rate right now. If you break it down, that's 5 or 6 times what you're paying for your felony defenders. So in that sense, we're still bargaining.
Any other questions at all for either of us? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for working this in so we can get back to our call.
After the criminal justice meeting, I reached Steve McCarty and told him what the criminal justice committee had forwarded to finance, so that he would have a heads up for today's meeting. So, and then Chief Judge Erickson met with Carl, and there's been a lot of conversations in the back, and as Carl had indicated, the Chief Judge has made some moves there to help to alleviate that situation. So as we'll move forward into our budget talks, and we'll take that under consideration. Next on the agenda will be Debbie Woodruff.
Thanks, Carl.
In your packet is your claims summaries.
Good morning. Net claims for September 2008. Highway fund, $35,676.86. Highway other funds, $638,096.69, for a total of $673,773.55.
Mr. Olthoff with a motion to pay the bills, Mr. Washington with a second, roll call vote.
Mr. Olthoff.
Aye.
Mr. Bossert.
Aye.
Ms. Campbell. Aye. Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mr. Scholl.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. McLaren.
Aye.
Mr. Vickery.
Aye. Motion carries.
General fund, $2,395,120.35. Special funds, $3,414,731.09, for a total of $5,809,851.44.
Mr. Scholl with a motion, Mr. Washington with a second, roll call vote.
Mr. Olthoff.
Aye.
Mr. Bossert.
Aye.
Ms. Campbell.
Aye.
Mr. Lear. Mr. Scholl.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. McLaren.
Aye.
Mr. Vickery.
Aye. Motion carries.
County Board payroll for July 9th through August 12th, 2008. Total meetings, 115. Per diems, $7,360. Mileage, $1,044.14, for a total of $8,404.14.
Mr. Washington with a motion, Mr. Bossert with a second, roll call.
Mr. Olthoff.
Aye.
Mr. Bossert.
Aye.
Ms. Campbell.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mr. Scholl.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. McLaren.
Aye.
Mr. Vickery.
Aye. Motion carries.
Then we also have the third quarter report. The comparison sheets I usually give you, I actually tucked in behind my introduction letter. It's about 5 pages in, I guess. And I did this similar to the one I did the last time, where we've got a 5-year comparison, both in numbers, and then on the next page is also the bar graph. The one thing I will point out, our revenues this time, our inmate housing revenue is $2 million higher this year than it was last year at this time. So that is a very positive thing, as long as it holds.
Ms. Campbell?
This is on the claims report. I noticed you made all the bond payments. How often are these bond payments made?
We do them monthly.
Monthly?
We need a motion to put this on file, the third quarter financial report. Mr. Washington with a motion, Mr. Olthoff with a second. Voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like saying. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Insurance, Lynn Mackett?
No updates this
No
month.
update? Okay. In your packet is your, oh, you've got Mr., oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lear.
I noticed we got something in the mailbox about this Ventrax I guess my question, does this mean there will not be a fair, benefits fair?
No, there will be a fair this year. We've got to get everyone familiar with the online enrollment and the process. We'll probably have some short meetings to kind of update everybody on how to go online and to enroll. Then hopefully, in the years to come, we may not have to do all that.
Any other questions on that? All right, thank you, Lynn. Mr. Frechette, is he here? Yes. You were behind Steve, I couldn't see you.
Well, I'm a little bit.
Well,
Not much.
He's right.
In your packet, your county treasurer's, county collector's report monthly resolutions, and we'll be passing them in a minute. Mr. Frechette.
Yeah, the only thing I have is we are now heading into our delinquent season. Just a little comparison. We're up about 500 parcels from last year. We're sending out about 500 more delinquent notices. And I think that's kind of the state of the economy. It's about $2 million more. So right now we got about 9.7 million in delinquent, and we had about 7.6 last year. So we'll be sending those out next Friday, certified. So my budget will be over on the postage again, but we do get that back. Just a clarification.
Yeah, those costs are all.
Those fees get put back at the end of the year. Yes, that's correct. So that's all I have, unless you have any specific questions.
Mr. Oldham.
X-Line Drainage District, there's a number of 22,928, and then another 17,769 for a total of 46,998. Is the 46,998 the total
That's correct. The top part's what's in the checking, the bottom part what's invested. Okay?
On the county treasurer report, we need a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Oldham, second by Mr. Washington. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. On the county collector's report, need a motion to approve. Mr. Lear and Mr. Boston. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. And the monthly resolutions are in your packet. The number, have you got the number in your packet? The total is $18,079.45, and I have them here for examination, but I need a motion to pass. So Mr. Washington with a motion. Mr. Lear with a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries, and thank you. Okay, we'll move on to number 8.
I have a question for Darren.
Oh, Mr. Foster.
Thank you. We've Illinois funds typically invest a lot in commercial paper and those types of money funds. Have we gotten any word on how their yield held out through this crunch?
It was between 1.2 and 1.9.
There was some drop off.
Yeah. But they are all backed by the federal government. I mean, we have nothing to be concerned about here locally. I know, you heard George Bush on TV last night. There is a scare out there. I don't know how else to say it, but I think you read Jeff Hamlis's article in the paper also. And all the banks here are very stable. And I do not do anything aggressive, believe me. So that's a good question.
Well, the Illinois funds are not local funds.
Well, but they are all backed by the federal government.
Commercial paper and that type of thing else with it.
Well, I'm instructed to invest in these by other departments. So. Do you have money in Illinois funds?
Because I hadn't seen anything lately. Yield.
Yeah, I mean, you can go out every day and find out what the yield is. It's taken a big hit. And just one other thing, the general fund, we're holding our own. Like Debbie reported, and I'm sure Steve will, the revenues are up with the federal unit housing, so we are holding our own. We got through the 3 payrolls, no problem in August.
Any other
That's all I
questions?
have.
Mr. Oldham?
How about on real estate taxes? How have there been more delinquencies, or they remain about the same?
Well, yeah, like I reported, Bill, it's, I've noticed people are using their credit cards more.
Scary.
Which isn't a good thing. We've had a lot of NSF checks. I mean, it's just something personal I don't really want to get into. It's, you know, it's other people's business, but it's tough, it's tough. Because we have to deal with all that, but, you know, it's fine. It's just, there are more delinquencies here. But what's unfortunate is, we'll get 99-point-some% of our money because of the tax sale. We get it from the tax buyer. And then it goes to the county clerk where that person has to redeem it.
All those expenses are added
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, yep. We might lose a few dollars in costs because the tax was went out so late. So there will be probably a drop in interest penalties.
Any other questions? None? Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, on to item 8, Finance Department, 49, the budget discussion, Mr. McCarty.
As usual.
Don't know where to go.
Did you?
You know, Uncle Bob's getting his done October 2nd.
Oh, fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, we're really. Okay.
Your friend has been doing my therapy.
Huh?
Your friend has been doing my Jim Johnson. Johnson, Mary Johnson. Oh, Jean.
In preparation for this day, which we've been moving forward to for quite some months, and with some of the problems that have arisen, there has been a lot of work behind the scenes, and I know that many of the committee members have met with Steve McCarty or called Steve McCarty, and so I appreciate those efforts so they're prepared for today. And I'd like to have Chairman Cruz make a few comments to preface the documents before you today.
And I was just told by Steve that we've got to do some more stuff.
We live in a world of flux.
It's like, you know, you work very hard for the last month, and we did everything we possibly could to bring as good of information as we possibly could forward to you, and it all got thrown out the window this morning. So, but besides that, I think everybody, or maybe everybody's not aware, but we're looking at going back to basically the departments having for their budget next year what they did get this year, instead of doing the 4% cut. How we arrived at that was after the last meeting, Steve brought it to my attention, and we worked on it, and I know we talked to a number of the committee members here to let them know that we did have a large contingency built into this year's budget. The department heads and the elected officials have worked very hard not to spend that, and we're well on our way to finishing this year with a very good year-end balance because of that. However, I think at the last meeting, everybody is very aware that with how things are going, services and/or personnel will probably have to start going should we have kept with that 4% cut. So we're looking at this contingency that we built in as a savings account. We were looking at possibly shifting that over to a capital contingency at some point in time, but we feel
that it was probably more important to at least save services and personnel at this time. So hopefully in the upcoming years, when the economy does get straightened out again, that this money can be again put back into a capital contingency for future capital development, much of which probably would be the courthouse. That's been in the top priority, I know, of everyone here. I know it's the top priority of everyone in the criminal justice system, so we're still trying to get that all figured out. Now for the bad news, I guess, is that Steve, of course, with what the judge presented this morning, has not had the opportunity to put that into the budget. And he was also handed some information on additional, I think it's additional reimbursements, which he did not include in the original budget, which will change some figures also. So we were talking in the hallway. I guess I would be of the opinion, I think we're better off trying to include these in so that everybody has the most up to date information that we can possibly get for the budget. I don't think we're doing ourselves, our departments, or our employees any good if we don't try and get as much accurate information as we can for this. So I think most of it is good, probably 95% maybe, but there will be some shifting that has to be done. I asked Steve if we would go ahead and include that in, if we could change the next finance meeting and make it a little earlier so that we can have that time period that we need to put it on display, if that would work, and I think we're going to be pushing that. So we may have to do one of two things. We may have to have a special finance meeting to handle that, because if we move it forward, I'm afraid we're going to get into messing up with what we're doing with our insurance bids. So that's another problem that we would have. So my guess is that we're probably going to have a special meeting just to deal with the final budget. So.
Thank you. Yep.
Well, yeah, I can go through, explain where we're at, answer any questions. And I just asked Mr. Vickery, I stepped out when Mr. Glazer and Chief Judge, Judge Erickson completed. I was trying to find my battery-powered calculator because I have new numbers now than what's printed out before you. But the battery was dead, so as I came back up, they were leaving, and I explained to Carl, what I have, so what we have before us. So since there was no vote, I guess you guys can decide how you want to approach with the new information here, and we'll proceed, I guess. I'll just start out as I was planning on it. I apologize, my brain's kind of flying all over the place now with these numbers here. Trying to figure out if we could accomplish that today, but I don't know if I'm real comfortable handwriting in a bunch of numbers and totals and stuff. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not sure if you are, but I'll explain what we have here. The first thing was just a FYI that I want to make sure I cover. Is a single page that you have. One side is the budget request for levy funds, and the other side should be an update for sales tax analysis. The update for the levy funds is really just a draft of the numbers that are in the budget at this point. There's a piece in the state statute dealing with the levy that talks about identifying things in September. I'm assuming it's a draft because we have other obligations coming up here in the next few months. So in an attempt to be compliant with that, we've outlined where we're at per fund as it relates to levy. So it's an FYI at this point, but I wanted to at least put out there the levels that we're dealing with for those. And then again, an update on sales tax. The backside continues to be higher than 07 for the same month collected time. As you can see, we're still in total a little off from the 06 to 08. Looking at those two different September on the right, bolded is, we do the budget at that point with the information, you know, at where we're at right now. So it's a best guess. We still have a lot of information before the final year number actually comes out. But so it's, you know, it's holding its own. So I mean, that's good news. It's not going down, you know, at this point. So is there any questions on those two reports?
Mr. Oldham.
My understanding from the judge's request that we have a net request of about 60,000. Is that right?
Right, and it's gonna require committee action to direct him to put that into the new budget numbers. So we're gonna have to make a decision on that probably today, so.
Do you want to talk about that now? Or do you want to,
Yeah, we can do that.
It's up-
What
I
is
don't
the
care
committee's
how you
pleasure
want
on
me to
that,
go
on
through
that
this,
issue? What is the committee's pleasure on that issue? Ms. Cantor?
Well, I'd like to know exactly just how much that we're going to have for Mr. Glazier. And does this mean that when you're gonna redo this budget and we'll meet again when the figures will actually be in here? I don't wanna write anything in because it gets all screwed up that way.
Let me give you a big picture.
Okay.
Carl started it out, and I'll give you my version of it, maybe from a number standpoint. The last month with the 4% decrease, it was an exact same approach as the 08 budget was approved. So there was a cut, but there was also there was amount added to contingency for the what if, and it was approximately $900,000. So our normal regular contingency was always around $400,000. So there was, you know, rounded figures, $500,000 in there still as a safety net for whether it's, you know, the department overruns, whether new things, you know, state mandates, you know, changes on funded mandates. And with the discussion of, do we keep that in light of potential services cuts, people, you know, potential layoffs, things like that? Is it wise to still keep that there, or would it be better moving it back in? As I recalculated going it back in, I was able to bring everybody at least back to the same amount in looking at things. However, that brings the total contingency down to $400,000, which is an extremely low amount in a $32 million budget. Which means new things, I have nowhere to go tap new you know, for new things, and which means everybody's got to hit that, you know, for sure they have to hit because it's that tight. That is the dilemma I have. So obviously, appreciate the chief judge offering that assistance. That I was going, I don't know where I'm going to come up with the other 60,000 at this point. You know, I mean, to move. However, I was also handed an updated state allocation as it relates to the probation services division of the administrative office of the Supreme Court, and it's higher. It's coming in higher, and Rick just got this, turned it in, and I went to the budget amount that I have. It's 18,000 higher than the actual last year, but this document usually shows up when this is over. So actually, this is actually early for this document. It's actually $66,000 higher than what I had budgeted. I actually went down with that budget, figuring with what's going on at the state level that more than likely, as it has been happening with these funds, they have been decreasing. So actually, the last 2 years they've actually gone up, but I've had them at a lower level in the budget. So you know, now, you know, all of a sudden I've got different revenues. We're looking at different expense. You know what I mean? You know, it does change the picture. However, you know, it's up to you if you want me to change the picture or not, or if we go with what we have. That's, you know, that's the thing. You know, I mean, we have some other, you know, possibilities. There may be some new things show up, you know, as we continue to analyze things between now and whenever. Then, you know, if we have a new meeting in October, we're still within the window. You know, early October, probably up through the second week, I would think, that we still have the window of the public review time from finance before it goes to the full board in November. So that's the gist of, you know, what's in the budget right now, what's actually printed up, and then the changes, you know, that are here. So that's kind of, you know, in a very short, brief analysis where we're at.
Any questions at this point? In other words, what he's done is take the contingency level down to keep our operating costs and expenses at that level. Mr. Oldfield.
On the planning department, in 2007, we were at 995,000. We brought that down in 2008. We took the legal fees out and had 75,000 in contingency. And for 2009, it's forecasted for 626, 446.
Right. The contingency part, like all the other departments that were identified in that contingency, that's the amount that's now spread back out to everybody. The original 07 had monies in there for economic development, so 188 went and was split into two departments.
And that's dropped to 181 now for...
No, actually, it's at 188 again. It went from that's the 4% decrease. Now it's back up to the same exact, well, it's in there. I don't want to, yeah, and then the legal fees, from when all the legal fees were being charged there have now, as the committee in its discussion gone, we've moved 75,000 from planning to capital development, and the legal fees will be charged there at this point. So it was, and those were funded at about 150,000. So we've taken about half of what was put in there through 05, 06 area, and then just changed it to a different part because Mike didn't want them there, because he didn't look at them, and so we just took the budget that was put in there for that and moved it over.
Is he comfortable with the 626 figure?
Well, I think he would like to have more, but at this point, I don't have anything else to go tap at this point, and that's the story for everybody at this point. All departments that had contingency in there, that contingency has now been reallocated. So there was a whole list of them. I don't have that list from last year's budget, but there was probably 15 departments on that list.
Was any reallocated back to planning?
No, it's not. Well, to go back up from.
No, you're talking about the 602.
Yeah, it was down around 602. Now it's at 626. The 75 is really the difference. The 75,000 of legal fees is really the net difference from where it's at right now and where it's going to be at.
It was 30 plus the 75.
Right, in the 08 there was 30 that moved to the state's attorney's office.
So it's 100.
Right. And originally there was about 150,000 put in there originally, so there's still a net, the net still in the planning department from that allocation.
Any other questions or comments?
What would be the next meeting for the finance? Is he have a special meeting?
I'm going to go back to administration to see what they want to do.
What's your timeline?
We have 15 days of public
15
review.
days of public review
Before the county board for the full board.
I'm going to be gone. I have a conference that's in the third week of October.
Biggest changes that we got to make, we got a $60,000 change on one issue, and a $50,000 change if we go with the chief judges.
Well,
He's got he's got two columns he's got to work in, right?
yeah, I don't know what he's in charge of 3 budgets, of course, jury and DNDC, so I don't know which one he's talking, what exactly he was referring to for his own, processing.
Right.
So I don't have all those details. Well, I could.
It's about the 17th.
What about that? I'm going to be gone the week of the 13th through the 17th for that conference. What about either the 9th? Is the 23rd too late?
No. Well, you can go as late as the 28th. And you have
What's the regular? What day is it?
30.
Oh, okay, so we're done. All right.
Friday,
The 9th to
When's executive?
Well, we could Friday the 24th.
Friday the 24th? Wait, I don't know about that. Is 24th open for everybody? Carl?
No, I don't have it.
October the 24th.
October
October 24th.
October.
Is that fine?
That's a Friday. Yeah.
It's on a Friday. Executives on Thursday if they, you know, they've been not needing to use or have execs, but, okay, let's set a meeting for the 24th at 9. Need a motion? Mr. Olthoff for the motion. Mr. Lear with a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like same, motion carries. Mr. Scholl.
The meeting on 30th then is canceled, is that correct? We won't need that one, or is this
No,
just?
we need to meet
special?
We gotta have insurance and pay the bills. So that's
We need that.
30th. That's a regular
We
meeting.
need
is
the 30th meeting
Yeah.
for the insurance.
The one
Insurance.
before that
Yeah,
is
this is
special.
special meeting.
It's a special meeting on the 24th. I need to read.
The board will vote on hiring. So that kind of needs to go from the committee to the full board as well as, you know, I mean, there's some stuff to this.
I know.
So,
It's got a picture.
obviously I got to look at it to pay for it, but the whole idea of the board identified the idea of it.
Oh, darn.
Let's, Carl, how's the administration want to proceed here? There's a couple of steps here. If they're gonna hire people, that's gotta have board approval, okay? So do you want to proceed with that now? Do you want to proceed on the 24th and put it before the November board?
I guess I would rather do it, I mean, if the committee is going to recommend that, we need to then put that into the budget, which we would take to the November meeting. So I don't see us, I guess I'm not comfortable dealing with anything going into this year's budget at this time. I would rather start the new budget with the new people if that's what they're going to do. Is that kind of what you're asking?
Right, what we're saying here is that should the committee approve the chief judge's request today?
Positions.
That, for the positions, okay, and that's what we're looking
We
at.
got to work on the funding, but the board
Because
has.
look on the funding.
The board has.
Because
to
he's
recommend.
looking at, I mean, he's looking at, again, the way I'm taking this, he's looking at working with Steve to figure this out for next year's budget. So I'm taking it that this would be something that they're going to start at the beginning of the budget year to move forward with.
Does the board have to approve them, since they're new positions or additional positions, doesn't the board have to move on that as well as the financial part,
I believe they do.
since it's new? Because then it's, as far as allocating position and then the benefit part of it.
Mr. Olton.
So do you want it at the October board meeting? Or you're wanting it at the November board meeting?
November. We can, I mean, if everybody's willing to move forward, we will know though, so that they can start advertising and things, so that when it gets to be to the December 1st or whenever, they can move forward with
So do
it.
you want a motion for, at this meeting?
If that's your desire to go ahead and approve,
I'll
I
make
guess,
that- I'll make
approve
that
those
motion.
positions and put it into the budget. I would also make those, I guess I would ask that, again, make it known that the chief judge is working with finance to come up with the funding, somehow come up with the funding for this.
I'll include that in the motion, that we move forward on it with the help of the chief judges, almost the match on it.
We've got a motion and a second. Mr. Washington, wait a minute. We've got a motion and a second, and it's a roll call vote.
Mr. Olthoff. Mr. Bossert.
Aye.
Ms. Campbell.
Can I ask a question, Barbara? Okay. Didn't the Judge Erickson say that he was gonna come up with $50,000, and we need 110, approximately, so it would be 55,000 that we would have
60,
to.
well, 60.
60, or they, okay.
Aye. Mr. Klepke?
Aye.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Scholl?
Aye.
Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Mr. Cruz?
Aye.
Mr. Vickery?
Aye, motion carries. So now we've given Steve direction to move forward on working with the chief judge to get this moved forward into the overall budget. What else should we have? Oh, Mr. Gessner with a question.
I had talked at our criminal justice meeting and let you aware of where my budget is at this time. I still need to sit down and talk with you, the chairman, and maybe Steve. My biggest problem that I'm having right now with the two facilities that I have, the morgue, I've never been touched on that morgue. And right now, this month alone is 9 autopsies. We're way over. We're projecting right now, I'm at 90,000 for morgue fees. We're projecting right now at $117,000, which is quite considerably over for even when the 341 that we go back to. When the building was built, all that stuff was paid for, and all the new equipment and all the new supplies. But now that after 3 years coming up here, I've never been touched on my budget, and it's going to hurt me every year until we take a look at this and analyze it. I think it's a must that we sit down and talk about this, because I'm going to be continually over. Right now, we're projecting at about 353,000, where I'm at 341 if we go at it. These are just new figures. Since I talked to Steve, we've been going at it. This has been an extremely busy month. It's been a busy year. A lot of investigations, a lot of things are coming in, and I keep emphasizing to the county board, you need to come out and understand how my office runs. There's 2 different offices, so I think it's a must that we need to sit down here.
Mr. Holtop.
Could you make a presentation sometime to the county board explaining that?
Absolutely.
So your projection right now is you'll be about 12,000 over.
Right on about 12,467 as we go, and I say
as a projection right now. Oh, Mr. McLaren.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess my question would be about, do you have any idea how many autopsies you're up this year compared to last year, offhand, or?
Well, we're at right at point at 88 right now with 3 months to go. Outside wise, we've done. See, the problem is that when you do the outside, they're going to pay you for the use of the morgue, but I never see that money coming back, so I have to redo that through my own budget, which is really hurting. I've talked to the other counties, different. LaSalle County is just about equal with me on autopsies, and their budget for morgue is $230,000, but they transport, and that's a large amount of money. But I think if I can sit down and talk to you, or just individually wise, you don't have to come out to the morgue. I can do it in the office, but I need to show you this. It's the office is very updated, and we're continually updating. We're trying to save money every way you can, but like my philosophy is, can you tell me how many times you're going to shovel snow this year and be able to start your snow blower? You can't. I can't do that. I do the best of my ability, and I'm just saying that we're in a potential, and autopsies are going up next year. So
I think if my first response is get those new numbers to Steve,
okay,
to see what we can do, okay, and then we'll move forward on it on the 24th. Okay, Mr. McLaren.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, please. I guess my question, I was trying to get at, do you know what your numbers were last year with autopsies compared to this year?
we were just over 100. We're going to probably be maybe 15 over.
And that's what, about 1,000 apiece?
About 1,200, 1,300. That's not including.
So you're up 15% roughly.
And it could go down next year, you know, it just.
Any comments or questions for Bob Gessner? Okay. All right, thanks, Bob. Get those numbers to Steve.
Thank
Your
you.
new projections,
Thank
okay?
you.
Go work with you.
Apologize to the committee that a revised agenda had to go out between the sheriff and I working on a new vehicle lease for corrections activity. I thought he was going to put it on the agenda, and he thought I was going to put it on the agenda, and obviously my mind's been occupied on other things. So the other reason speaking, I'm not going to speak toward the program. It's exactly what what's changing there with the corrections program, but it has to do with the inmate rental program and between the Chicago feds and Indiana feds and things. We discussed not doing squad cars, and we're not this year. We looked at starting one at least for vans that transport inmates and things for that program. So also, one of the other reasons we're here is the sheriff called me on Tuesday. They were beginning to get information through Ford Motor Credit, who we've done the revolving loans through with these with the squads and the like, and they informed the sheriff's department that they were that division of Ford is going out of business. They're stopping the credit part. So they would have done this, this deal, but the sheriff's department, sheriff didn't feel comfortable with that. So I contacted National City. They have a municipal finance division, and obviously we have a lease through them right now that we did like 98, 99 that will be paid off, in this upcoming August. So we have a standing relationship. Gentleman there worked on some information, got it to me yesterday afternoon. I see that there's a typo which I can get changed, as this, if you decide to move this on the first page of the type of equipment. The one 2009 Ford Cruiser is not $69,000. The line, the 4 E150 should be the $69,900, and then the one is $23,610. So those two will, I'll get a updated copy, but just wanted to make you aware of that typo there. The number is right, all the information is correct. It's just that got mixed up there. And then related equipment, obviously there's things that have to be done to these vans and to secure them and the like with transporting inmates. So we have two options. Because they're vans, I asked for a 5-year option. The squad cars, we've done 3-year options because of the wear and tear that's put on the vehicles and the need to turn them around potentially within the 4th year, 3rd to 4th year. I don't want to read all this to you. It's obviously a lot of the jargon, but the last 2 pages there that's connected there are the schedules. The first one being the 3-year schedule, the second one being the 5-year schedule. At this point, we've liked the 3-year ones, but being that these are the vans and they will more than likely go 5 to 7 years, I'm tempted to go and recommend the 5-year one at this point with the budget constraints. We did deplete the budgets for next year, although we should be able to start another cycle of inmate rotation since we're not doing it this year toward the end of next year. And this will obviously help us if we spread these vans out a little bit longer toward their life cycle, give us a little bit more flexibility in the budget to get the squads going again in that rotation. So being that we're going over multiple fiscal years, the board has to authorize this. So at this point, if you're all comfortable with that, I'd probably make a recommendation of going 5 years with National City Municipal Division, if you're in favor of that at this point. And it's not a budgetary issue, it's more of, entering into this lease agreement at this point. It's technically in the budget. We had some monies in there to do a squad lease, but the sheriff, we've all agreed not to do one this year and rotate, go another year. So that's where there technically is still some funds available to do that if we choose to.
Requires committee action to move forward. Mr. Olthoff with a motion. Mr. Bossert with a second. Roll call vote.
Mr. Olthoff. Mr. Bossert.
Aye.
Ms. Campbell.
Aye.
Mr. Plecky.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mr. Scholl.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Cruz.
Aye.
Mr. Vickery.
Aye. Motion carries. Any, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Olthoff.
Can I make a motion to combine from declaration of vacancy through the appointment of Louis Mondrum? To approve.
Motion to combine the appointments of commissioners, second by Mr. Bossert. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like saying, motion carries. Now we need a motion to approve that group, and I'll read them into the. Motion by Mr. Olthoff, second by Mr. Washington. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like saying. We're talking about the reappointment of, did you have the declaration of vacancy on?
Yes.
Okay. Declaration of vacancy on the Housing Authority. The reappointment of Harold McQueen as Commissioner to the Mantino Drainage District Number 3. The reappointment of Richard Hagenow as Commissioner to the Union Drainage District Number 1. The reappointment of Mark Guimo as Commissioner to the Union Drainage District Number 1. The reappointment of Glenn Genders as Commissioner to the B.M. Lewis Drainage District. And the appointment of Louis Mumbrum as Commissioner to the Reading Community Fire Protection District. Mr. Beatty, under the finance discussions, has a pass out for you and would like to spend a minute with you.
Coming up front or back or?
Come right up here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, before you read it.
And then I read them in after.
You did that.
Vote to combine and then.
Yep.
Right.
Steve's got some numbers he wants to present.
It really does. Bottom part is just request for an increase on the expenses for '09 budget over the revised '08 that you saw today. And the part that I think is most relevant is our revenue has increased actually the last couple of years. And a large part of that has to do with printing of large colored maps. When I say large, they're I think 22 by 33 inch maps. Obviously require a lot of special paper and toner to operate that equipment. And so there's revenue that comes in to cover that. We have seen an increase. I highlighted 07, 08, and 09 budget. One correction I'll make, since the previous budget, the numbers that you were just handed today in the packet now reflect an 09 budget revenue of 71,978. So if you look at the budget column for 09, I have 70,978. The revised number is 71,978. So the excess there would show 522. You can see the revenue history. 07, we had some excess. 08, well, quite a bit of excess. A large portion of that had to do with one large project that I don't expect. Certainly can't budget that is going to happen every year. The 81,000 is an estimate. I expect it'll be higher than that. As of now, 81,000 is either in the door or built or in the process of being built on projects that we're working on now. I expect that to be higher. Next year, I was budgeting what I thought very conservatively of 72,500. The budget you have before you is 71,978, pretty close to the same. Again, I expect that'll probably come in a little bit higher next year, but I think that's a very conservative amount. As that revenue comes in, there's expense associated with it. This year, it looks like we're going to be able to absorb most of that, although we'll go over possibly in that line item. It looks like we're going to save a little bit of money on a couple of other places, so I don't see need to revise my 08 budget at all. But it looks like this is a trend that we'll have additional revenue and additional expenses that go along with that. That's been a pattern, and it appears that we'll be doing that. These large maps that we do, most of those are for attorneys, consultants, bond companies, people doing analysis. For the most part, maps are available on a smaller scale for most individuals that need things. Realtors, there's things online. We work closely with GIS. So for the average person and a lot of small projects, we're actually seeing less of that kind of revenue. But for some of these large programs, especially now that we have color maps, it's more attractive. And of course, most people in their homes, or even most businesses, don't have the capability of printing these large maps. So I think we'll continue to see demand for those into the future.
So your bottom line is on the 07, 09, what is your request?
Well, requesting $13,000 increase in expenses of budget year 09 over 08. And what the other information shows is we've certainly held expenses over the last, I've been here since early 07. We cut our budget significantly here before, we've held it, and we're holding overall expenses. This gives you a little bit of that history, and also shows our revenue side. We've shown some increases, and I think that will continue as well.
Mr. McCarty.
It's voted on as two separate budgets. Assessor is separate from Board of Review. So in that 13,000, is it one or the other, or is that a combination of both?
I'm sorry. The overall numbers is combined assessor and Board of Review. For the 09 budget, this revenue shows up on the assessor side, so I think that's where it would be appropriate. Board of Review would stay the same. The assessor's office would increase. That's where the expenses are related to that income. So no increase in Board of Review and increase on the assessor's side.
All I can say is at this point is give those numbers to Steve. Does he have those latest numbers?
Not in this particular format, but we talked about some aspects of it when we had some large expenses earlier this year related to the unforeseen income. I talked to him at that time, sharing that we got some income and don't project that way out in the future, and we will have some other expenses that my hope is to absorb those into this year's budget without having to go to contingency or ask for revision. It looks like with 2-3 months left in the year, we're hopefully able to do that.
Just get your latest numbers to Steve. We'll meet on the 24th and try to put this all together. Yes, Steve. Mr. McCarty.
I'm sorry that I'm frustrated, but I put out memos over the last couple of months, and I apologize to the committee that I'm learning about it as soon as you're learning about it when I'm learning about it. There's no way I can present something to you when I'm learning about it today. So I asked the department heads, please, give me this stuff. You know, I mean, I can't do anything with it when I don't know anything about it, you know, and I can't help or suggest, recommend anything. So I apologize that we have to have a special meeting, but I didn't know about any of this stuff, and I'm very frustrated right now, and I apologize for that. But you know, when the memos go out and the requests are made, I need the information. If it's out there, I need it. You know, I know we're tight, but I can't help if something changes. You know what I mean? And so I apologize, but you know, I'm just very frustrated right now.
Yeah, it's been a tough season, and I understand that, Steve. I've spent a little time on the phone with you, and I understand that. It's been a tough season. Any old or new business to come before this committee? Any old or new business to come before this committee? Not, I entertain the motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Olthoff, second by Mr. Lear. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
I don't make the motion.
All opposed, like saying. Meeting is adjourned.